So this morning I'm going to be listening to a piece by Karl-Heinz Stockhausen. It's called Gruppen, and it's for 3 orchestras. It's his opus number 6. So in sort of the post-war period, Stockhausen was not producing pieces at a very fast rate. They were just as complicated and like deep works, but his output was a bit slower, right? So around 1957, he was at his 6th piece, and every piece he had made in this period was like really substantial in its duration and execution. The scores were really complicated. This one is like one of his largest pieces in terms of instrumentation. It's over 100 people required. I'll get to the layout of it in a second, but just the forces here are 5, 5, 5, 2 saxophones, 3, then 8, 6, 7, 1. Then we have 12 percussionists. We'll get to that in a second. 1 keyboardist, also doubling on Glock and Celesta. Another Celesta, piano, and then electric guitar, 2 harps, and strings. We need 13, 13, 10, 8, 6 for the strings. This is written for a specific hall. Rhines Hall, one of the exhibition halls in Cologne, Deutz. And the Cologne Radio Orchestra is playing this under Stockhausen's conducting, Bruno Maderna's conducting, and Pierre Boulez's conducting. So these are 3 modernist composers conducting the 3 ensembles. I think this might be Stockhausen in the middle. You can see him up the front here. There's like these platforms at the front and 2 sides of the hall. The ones on the 2 sides are a bit angled, and their setups kind of look like this. So you can see these little like Y-shaped things. These are string stands, right? Because there's 2 to a stand. So in the, I guess orchestra number 1 would be the center. You have a piano situated right in front of the conductor and a loudspeaker next to it. And then there's strings to the conductor's left. Violas are over here. Then 4 stands of violins, 1 cello stand and 1 bass stand. Then electric guitar and 2 harps are immediately to the director's right. Then you have the saxophones, trumpets, 2 flutes, E-flat clarinet, I think, horn, trombone, bass, trombone, oboe, bassoon. So that's sort of like your brass and winds are kind of intermixed in this area. And then at the back, you have a bunch of percussion stuff. So yeah, Orchestra 2, their percussions are vibraphone, tubular bells, cowbells, tam-tam, 3 cymbals, wood drums, other drums, snare drum, tambour de basque, ratchet, 2 triangles. The director has a harp to their left, as well as the strings. And the strings to their left are 5 stands of violins, 1 stand of violas, 2 stands of cellos, 1 stand of basses. Then they got 2 horns, bassoon, English horn, oboe, clarinet, alto flute, and I think a piccolo. The tubas in this group, as well as 2 trumpets and 2 trombones. They're situated behind the winds, so this is a little bit more like ordinary. And then there's the Glockenspiel or Celesta player, and a bunch of other percussion. Looks like marimba, 5-octave marimba, Glock, cowbells, tam-tam, 3 cymbals, 2 wood drums, 4 drums, 1 snare drum, tambour de basque. So a lot of repeats from the second orchestra. The third conductor, maybe this is Pierre Boulez, I'm not sure. He has to deal with, he or she or they have to deal with 4 stands of violins, 2 stands of violas, 1 stand of cellos, 1 stand of basses. This is like the same string setup as Orchestra 2. Then they have oboe and a flautist doubling on piccolo up here. Harps at the back. Then the brass, there's 2 rows of brass almost. Horn, trumpet, a couple like double reeds, so English horn, bassoon. Bass clarinet tucked away here. And then I think we got bass trombone, 2 other trombones, 2 of the horns, and a clarinet here. So this is like winds and brass are even more intermixed in the setup for the third orchestra. Yeah, this is where the 5-octave celesta will be. The xylorimba is the big pitched percussion, and there's a bunch of repeats, so the cowbells, tam-tam, cymbals, wood drums, other drums, snare drum, tambour de basque. So 3 orchestras are very similar in their makeup, and they're like 3 like chamber orchestras, although a little bit bigger. There's like 36 to 37 players in each one. These arrows, like all these X's are people in these diagrams, and these arrows are actually like showing you where the percussionist needs to be able to get to. So these percussion setups listed here are actually very specific and well thought out. So for the first performance, the 3 platforms had to actually be constructed. So if you were to do this yourself, you would have to build these platforms. For Orchestra 1 and 3, the platforms should be 12 by 5 by 0.5 meters. And for Orchestra 2, the one that's at the front, the dimensions are 12 by 5 by 0.4 meters. So this one up here is actually a little bit lower to the ground. Most concert halls are not built like at a uniform level. They're built so that people sitting at the back can see better than people at the front. So I think some of these platforms had to be tampered with a little bit in their thickness. I don't know if you can see that in the picture. Talk about an expensive piece. You gotta like hire carpenters. Yeah, here's where the real expensive stuff happens, because you gotta pay all these performers. There were 3 hours of rehearsal before this was premiered, which is insane. And with all the percussionists there. And then on top of that, there were additional rehearsals of 2 hours long, like of 2 hours in total, where we were rehearsing with the individual orchestras, I think. In addition, there was 1 special rehearsal for the strings of Orchestra 1, 2 special rehearsals for the brass altogether, 1 2-hour rehearsal for just the percussionists, 2 5-hour rehearsals of all 3 orchestras on all platforms in the concert hall itself, 6 rehearsals of 2 hours each, conductors alone. So, okay, let me try to figure this out. To put this into perspective, like a typical piece of contemporary music will get almost no rehearsal from an orchestra, because orchestras don't like composers. So they'll get like maybe 45 minutes of rehearsal. And this piece, it looks like it had like, in terms of like what the conductors had to be present for, it had more than well over 6 hours of rehearsal. Maybe like more like 8 hours of rehearsal. So this is incredibly expensive. This is ridiculous. It's a cutaway score. You can kind of see how this is just one of the orchestras, and then when you get further into it, you get multiple orchestras playing at the same time. And they're conducted at different tempi, so we're going to get some poly-tempo stuff. It looks like the entrance of every time there's like an entrance of an orchestra at a new tempo, they get a full measure of conducting before they come in. That's what these measures of silences are. And sometimes they don't start coming in on a downbeat of another orchestra's measure. Sometimes it's in the middle of another orchestra's measure. So yeah, this would need a lot of rehearsal with all three orchestras just to like get the conductors to... There's a lot to pay attention to as a conductor. You got to like listen to where other orchestras are for your cue. It is a 12-tone piece. Here's the row. It's a symmetrical all-interval row. This is definitely his Stockhausen's like more serial period. There is a logarithmic series of tempi used in Gruppen, which correspond to a chromatic scale. Like these correspond to like an octave of chromatic notes. So kind of an interesting idea. He's already sort of in the direction of total serialism here. Let's give it a listen. It's only half an hour long. And the recording I'm listening to is going to be in the video description. We'll go with this ensemble intercontemporain performance. It's kind of ridiculous. There's like more musicians than audience. Like just the logistics of this thing. Okay, yeah, my immediate thoughts. This is a really great performance. The conductors are Matthias Pincher, Paul Fitzsimon, and Bruno Mantovani. And it's the Orchestra du Conservatoire de Paris. And maybe supplemented with members of Ensemble Intercontemporain. This was difficult to follow along with a PDF. It might have been a bit easier if I had the physical score. But there were like sort of waves of sound, right? There were a lot of moments where the orchestra either completely stopped or came down to a very few number of players, so it was easy to sort of keep caught up with by going to those moments. And I honestly think that's what makes the piece a little bit more engaging. I think a more amateur composer would have all three orchestras playing all the time, or maybe have long stretches of that, whereas Stockhausen has so designed this piece that in sort of like this carefully controlled manner, you are pulled into full orchestra realm, or just like hocketing between entire orchestras, or just very small ensembles of the orchestra and soloists. And this is right from the beginning all the way to the end, so it like permeates the fabric of the piece. There was a really cool moment where you just had the three brass sections hocketing with one another, and then a big piano solo came in. That was like one of the more memorable moments, and sort of at a climactic, like a proportionally interesting moment in the piece where a climax would normally occur. And the use of percussion was interesting. I like that you really do get percussion throughout, and it's like this, it's similar percussion from all three ensembles. It's just like you could imagine that in a live performance it would be kind of moving around you constantly as you get used to the, like, there's so much percussion that it actually takes quite a bit of time for your ears to get used to which orchestra has which sounds. Yeah, this is like definitely a total serial piece kind of thing. I think compared to some of Boulez's works, I think Stockhausen's a little bit more consistent in his serial pieces. They are always interesting rhythmically. This is a very rhythmically interesting piece. The polytempo stuff is really cool. It looks really fun to conduct, and I think that's also something that Webern did. So in terms of influences, I think this piece is very much like a logical extension of what Webern was starting to do before the Second World War ended. And there's definitely a very pointillistic aspect to the piece, and Stockhausen's willing to get very sparse with things and pointillistic. I don't think he would have been so ambitious if Webern hadn't already done it. Oh yeah, I was going to talk about the comment section in this video and how sort of varied it is, because this has 300,000 views. So you're getting like people who are classical music listeners who have never listened to a piece of modernist music ever, and then people who are very opinionated about modernist music who have maybe this is like one of 2 or 3 pieces they've heard like this, and all the way to like people who are just like Stockhausen fans and they're super into it. I think the reason why pieces like this garner so much attention and controversy and stir up people's opinions so much is just the sheer forces of it. I don't think that people, the type of people who are haters and hate on this sort of thing, they're more attuned to money and resources than they are to the actual music being created, and they're more stirred up by expensive things. So that's my thoughts on that, right? Like, you never see this kind of engagement on pieces for solo flute, or, you know, but there are pieces for solo flute that are just as challenging and contemporary. I guess that's sort of the legacy of this piece, is that it's very expensive and big and elaborate. And as I mentioned in our last Stockhausen video, that's something that Stockhausen was known for his whole career, and he never stopped making pieces that were more and more extravagant in their forces. And in my opinion, that's not really what he should have been known for, or what he should be remembered for, because that's not what makes music good, in my opinion. So yeah, that was Gruppen. We're going to go further back into the 50s here for the next listening session with some Messiaen.